For centuries, a handful of giant banks pretty much ran the show in the UK. They were these massive, unshakable institutions. And let's face it, they were often a total pain to deal with. Then, back in 2015, this startup shows up. No branches, a super bright coral-colored card, and kind of a funny name. And it just started changing, well, everything. This is the story of Monzo. Okay, let's get into it.
But think about that for a second. Why were so many people suddenly willing to switch banks? I mean, it's a huge hassle, right? It's one of those life admin jobs most of us put off forever, and yet millions were doing it. To really get how Monzo pulled this off, we have to go back and look at the problem they were designed to solve.
You see, before Monzo came along, the UK banking scene was built on a really shaky foundation. Seriously unhappy customers. For years, people had the same complaints over and over. But the big banks, they either couldn't or wouldn't change. The whole industry wasn't just ready for a shakeup, it was practically begging for one.
So there's this metric companies use called a Net Promoter Score, or NPS. It basically boils down to one question: would you recommend us to a friend? Now, any score below 0 is a massive red flag. It means more people are actively telling their friends to stay away than are recommending you. And just look at the scores for the UK's big banks. They were deep in the red. People were just sick and tired of hidden fees, clunky apps, and having to waste their lunch break standing in line at a branch.
And right into this environment of, let's be honest, pure customer frustration, a new player showed up. And this wasn't just a slightly better version of the old thing, it was something completely different from the ground up.
So, what exactly is Monzo? Well, it's a bank with no branches. None. Zero. Instead of spending a fortune on fancy buildings and staff, Monzo poured all of its money into technology. Your entire bank lives inside an app on your phone, and the whole thing was built from scratch to fix the very things people hated about their old banks.
So did it work? You bet it did. By 2019, Monzo had signed up over 3 million customers. Just let that number sink in for a moment. That's 1 out of every 20 adults in the entire UK. This wasn't some niche little tech product. This was a mainstream revolution, and it was happening incredibly fast.
And where were all these customers coming from? Well, they were being poached. This data shows a flood of unhappy customers pouring out of the big names like RBS and Barclays. And that giant positive number at the top, that's Monzo. They weren't just finding new people, they were actively taking customers from the giant.
So how in the world did they do it? What was their secret? It wasn't just one magic trick, it was a 4-part playbook that completely rewrote the rules of what a bank could be. Let's break it down.
The first secret was so simple but so powerful. Just make banking easy. Monzo's team literally looked at every single frustrating part of traditional banking. Every long line, every confusing piece of paper, and just used technology to get rid of it.
Okay, take opening an account. Traditionally, this was a total nightmare, right? Paperwork, appointments, waiting weeks for a card. Monzo turned it into a 5-minute job you can do on your sofa. You download the app, take a picture of your ID, record a quick little video of yourself, and that's it. You're done. They didn't just make the process better, they totally blew up the old one.
All right, the second pillar was a complete culture shock for the banking world, which is, famously secretive. Instead of making all their decisions behind closed doors, Monzo decided to build their bank right out in the open, with their customers.
No, I'm serious. They built their bank in public. They have this huge online community where users literally suggest and vote on the next features to be built. When they were planning their launch in the US, they put their entire roadmap on a public Trello board for anyone to see and comment on. Can you even imagine a traditional bank doing that? This kind of transparency builds an insane amount of trust.
We've all got a horror story about bank customer service, right? Endless hold music, talking to robots, getting passed from person to person. Monzo knew that if they could actually fix this, they'd have a huge advantage.
So Monzo's solution was to build support for the way we live now. You can chat with a real human 24/7 right from inside the app. No phone calls, no menus, no waiting on hold. They even set up an office in Las Vegas just so they could have people ready to help their UK customers overnight. It's a huge investment, but it's a key reason people love them so much.
And now for the final piece of the puzzle, and honestly, this might be the most important one. This is the secret weapon that makes everything else possible. It all comes down to cost, and it's something the old banks find almost impossible to compete with.
See, for a big, traditional bank, their costs are just a nightmare. About a third of their entire budget is spent just keeping physical branches open. Another 20% goes to maintaining these ancient, clunky IT systems that are decades old. So think about it. Half their money is gone before they've even done anything for the customer. It's like a giant financial anchor weighing them down.
And Monzo, they have none of that. No branches to pay for, no ancient computer systems to fix. That massive cost saving is their superpower. It's all money they can pour back into building better tech and hiring better people to create a better bank.
So, what were the big banks doing while this little startup was running away with their customers? Well, they tried to fight back. But, as it turns out, it's really hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Take a look at this number, £100 million. It's an almost unbelievable amount of money, and it's what one of the UK's biggest banks, RBS, literally set on fire trying and failing to copy Monzo.
So the story goes that back in 2017, RBS thought about just buying Monzo. They decided not to. Instead, they figured, hey, we can build our own. So they spent 2 years and £100 million creating their own version, called Bo.
This timeline just says it all, doesn't it? After 2 years of work, Boo finally launches in November 2019. By January 2020, just a few months later, the guy in charge of the whole project quits. It's the perfect example of the problem. You can't just copy the app. You have to copy the entire culture, the speed, the low-cost model, and for a giant old bank, that's next to impossible.
But hang on, this doesn't mean Monzo has already won the war. Shaking up an industry is one thing, but actually dominating it for the long haul is a whole different ballgame. And Monzo has some pretty big challenges ahead.
Yeah, the fight is far from over. I mean, can that amazing customer service keep up when they have 10 or 20 million customers? How do they convince older, wealthier people to trust a bank that only exists on a phone? They still don't offer big things like mortgages, which is where traditional banks make a lot of their money. And on top of all that, you've got new copycats popping up and tougher regulations to deal with. So yeah, the road ahead is definitely not easy.
Which really leaves us with this one big question. Monzo proved that a bank can be built around a fantastic app and a customer-first attitude. But is that truly enough to conquer the entire financial world? Or was this just the opening shot in a much longer, much more complicated war for the future of our money?